What could drive a once loving sibling to destroy their own family? Was it jealousy, desperation, or something far darker? In a web of secrets and lies, the truth behind one fateful night will leave you questioning everything about loyalty and trust. The Johnson family was the kind of family others envied. Their stately home, nestled in one of Atlanta's most prestigious neighborhoods, was a reflection of their hard work, success, and unity. Patrick and Linda Johnson had built their lives from the ground up, rising from modest beginnings to embody the American dream. Patrick was a respected business consultant, known for his sharp mind and decisive leadership, while Linda ran a thriving real estate firm. Together, they were a power couple whose love and commitment to their family were often the talk of their social circles. Their two children, Kendrick and Naomi, had been raised to reflect the same values of ambition and discipline that had propelled their parents to success. Patrick and Linda often said that family came first, and every decision they made was rooted in ensuring their children had the tools to thrive in a competitive world. On the surface, the Johnsons were the perfect family, but beneath the glossy exterior, cracks had begun to form, cracks no one wanted to acknowledge. Kendrick, the eldest, was the pride of the family. From an early age, he had shown a natural talent for leadership. In high school, he was the student council president, captain of the debate team, and valedictorian. His parents beamed with pride when he earned a full scholarship to one of the top business schools in the country. By his late 20s, Kendrick had become a successful entrepreneur, launching a series of tech startups that had not only made him wealthy, but also positioned him as one of Atlanta's most promising young innovators. Kendrick's success wasn't just a personal victory, it was a family triumph. Patrick often introduced him at events as "my brilliant son," while Linda's social media was filled with posts celebrating his achievements. Kendrick basked in the admiration, but he remained humble, never forgetting his parents' sacrifices to give him the opportunities he had. To outsiders, Kendrick was the golden child, a beacon of everything the Johnson family stood for. But to Naomi, his younger sister, Kendrick's success often felt like a shadow she couldn't escape. Naomi, 3 years younger than Kendrick, was a dreamer with a creative soul. While Kendrick thrived in structured environments, Naomi found her peace in painting and photography. She had a unique talent for capturing raw emotion in her art, a skill that earned her accolades in local galleries and exhibitions. Yet, for all her talent, Naomi often felt invisible within her family. Her parents appreciated her creativity, but didn't quite understand it. Patrick would glance at her paintings and offer polite compliments, but his enthusiasm for Kendrick's business ventures was unmatched. Linda, while proud of Naomi's accomplishments, would sometimes encourage her to think practically about her future. Naomi didn't resent her brother's success, at least, not at first. But as time went on, the constant comparisons became difficult to ignore. At family gatherings, relatives would ask about Kendrick's latest project while Naomi's work was often reduced to a passing mention. "You're so lucky to have such a talented brother," people would say, as though Naomi's own achievements were footnotes to his story. Despite the growing resentment, Naomi kept her feelings to herself. She didn't want to be seen as petty or ungrateful. But the more she tried to suppress her emotions, the more they festered, slowly eroding the bond she once shared with Kendrick. The Johnson family's public image was spotless. They were active in their community, attending charity events and hosting fundraisers. Patrick and Linda were often invited to speak at seminars on parenting and professional success, sharing their secrets to raising high-achieving children. Behind closed doors, however, things weren't as perfect as they seemed. Patrick was a perfectionist who held his children to impossibly high standards. While Kendrick thrived under the pressure, Naomi often felt crushed by it. She would spend hours perfecting her art pieces, fearing her father's quiet but cutting critiques. Linda, on the other hand, tried to be the mediator, She encouraged Naomi to pursue her passion, but often did so in ways that felt dismissive. "Your art is beautiful, sweetheart," she'd say, "but maybe you should consider teaching or something more stable. Just as a backup plan." Naomi hated the word backup. To her, it implied failure, a safety net for someone who wasn't good enough to succeed on their own. For years, the Johnsons ignored the growing tension within their family. Patrick and Linda focused on maintaining their image, while Kendrick was too busy with his career to notice Naomi's struggles. Naomi, in turn, became adept at hiding her feelings, burying her insecurities beneath a facade of politeness. But the cracks in their family dynamic were impossible to ignore during certain moments. At Kendrick's 30th birthday party, Naomi presented him with a custom painting, a portrait that captured him in a moment of quiet reflection. While Kendrick appreciated the gift, Patrick's comment stung. "It's beautiful, Naomi. But next time, try painting something people might actually buy." Naomi laughed it off, but inside, she felt crushed. Moments like these became more frequent as Kendrick's star continued to rise. The final straw came when Kendrick announced his engagement to Sophia, a nurse he'd met at a medical conference. Sophia was everything Patrick and Linda admired: intelligent, ambitious, and grounded. She quickly became a fixture in their family, earning their praise and admiration. Naomi watched as her parents fawned over Sophia, showering her with the kind of attention Naomi had longed for her entire life. Family dinners became centered around wedding plans and Sophia's achievements. Patrick and Linda began referring to Sophia as the perfect addition to the family, a comment that stung Naomi every time she heard it. For the first time, Naomi felt like an outsider in her own home. She couldn't help but wonder if her parents would have been happier if she had turned out more like Sophia: practical, hardworking, and easy to love. Despite her growing resentment, Naomi tried to keep the peace. She told herself that her feelings were irrational, that she should be happy for Kendrick and Sophia. But the more she tried to suppress her emotions, the harder it became to hide them. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Naomi couldn't hold back. "It's funny," she said, her voice tinged with bitterness. "Sophia's been here for 5 minutes, and suddenly she's the center of the universe." The room fell silent. Kendrick shot her a warning look, but Naomi ignored it. "I mean, I've been here my whole life, but I guess I'm just not good enough." Patrick and Linda tried to diffuse the tension, but the damage was done. Naomi's outburst marked the beginning of a series of confrontations that would ultimately tear the family apart. When Kendrick introduced Sophia to the Johnson family, it was clear from the beginning that she was someone special. She walked into their home with a confidence that wasn't boastful, a warm smile that immediately put everyone at ease, and a genuine charm that made even Patrick, normally skeptical of outsiders, soften instantly. Sophia was a registered nurse with a passion for helping people, a quality Patrick and Linda admired deeply. Finally, someone who can keep up with Kendrick, Patrick joked over dinner that evening, his laughter carrying an undertone of pride. Linda nodded in agreement, reaching out to squeeze Sophia's hand. "You're a breath of fresh air," she said. Naomi, seated at the far end of the table, forced a polite smile. She picked at her food, watching how easily Sophia navigated the room. Her stories of long shifts at the hospital and her dream of opening a community health clinic had Patrick and Linda hanging on her every word. Even Kendrick, who rarely brought anyone home, looked smitten as he watched her charm his parents. Sophia seemed perfect. Too perfect, Naomi thought. It wasn't just the way Sophia seemed to effortlessly win over Patrick and Linda that bothered Naomi. It was how her parents praised Sophia in ways that felt like subtle jabs at Naomi's shortcomings. "She's so hardworking," Linda said as they cleared the table that night. "You can see how much she values family and discipline. It's inspiring." Naomi bit her tongue, knowing that her mother's words weren't meant to be malicious, but still feeling the sting. Those were the same qualities her parents had always wanted from her: qualities Naomi had spent her life trying to emulate, often falling short in their eyes. Over the next few weeks, Sophia became a regular presence in the Johnson household. She joined Patrick and Linda for Sunday dinners, helped plan Kendrick's upcoming birthday party, and even offered to assist Naomi with one of her art shows. Naomi politely declined the help, but Sophia's insistence left her feeling cornered. "I just want to support you," Sophia said with a kind smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Naomi tried to convince herself that her unease was just jealousy. After all, Sophia had done nothing wrong. She was kind, generous, and genuinely seemed to love Kendrick. But Naomi couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Sophia than she let on. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Sophia brought a bottle of wine she claimed was her absolute favorite. Patrick raised an eyebrow when he saw the label. "This is a Johnson family classic," he said with a laugh. "We've been drinking this for years." Sophia's face flushed, and she quickly recovered with a laugh. "I must have developed good taste then," she said. But Naomi noticed the way Sophia's fingers tightened around her glass. Small moments like this began to pile up. Sophia knew too much about the family, their routines, their habits, even their favorite meals. At first, Naomi brushed it off as Sophia being attentive, but soon it became unsettling. The tipping point came one night when Naomi caught Sophia lingering in Patrick's study. Naomi had been heading to the kitchen for a glass of water when she noticed the light was still on in the usually empty room. Peeking inside, she saw Sophia standing by the bookshelf, staring at an old family photograph. It was a picture of Patrick, Linda, Kendrick, and Naomi, taken years ago at a family reunion. In the corner of the photo stood Patrick's younger brother, Aaron, who had disappeared from their lives decades ago after a bitter falling out with Patrick. Naomi watched as Sophia picked up the photo and traced Aaron's face with her finger. "What are you doing?" Naomi asked, stepping into the room. Sophia jumped, quickly setting the photo back in its place. "Oh, I didn't mean to snoop," she said with a nervous laugh. "I was just admiring how close your family seems." Naomi narrowed her eyes. The next morning, the photograph was missing. Naomi's unease turned into obsession. She began paying closer attention to Sophia, noticing things she hadn't before. Sophia seemed overly interested in Patrick's stories about his childhood, often steering conversations toward topics that involved Aaron. "Did you ever try to reconnect with him?" Sophia asked one evening, her tone casual, but her eyes sharp. Patrick sighed, shaking his head. "He made his choice," he said firmly. "We don't talk about Aaron anymore." Sophia didn't push further, but Naomi saw the flicker of disappointment on her face. Naomi began digging into Sophia's background, searching for anything that could explain her strange behavior. What she found was both shocking and confusing. Sophia's mother had grown up in the same small town as Aaron. In fact, their families had lived just a few streets apart. Naomi's mind raced. Was it a coincidence? Or was there something deeper connecting Sophia to her family? Unable to hold back any longer, Naomi confronted Sophia one evening when they were alone in the kitchen. "Who are you really?" Naomi demanded, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. Sophia looked genuinely startled. "What are you talking about? You've been digging into our family's history. You know things you shouldn't. And don't think I haven't noticed how obsessed you are with Aaron." Sophia's face hardened. For a moment, Naomi thought she was going to deny everything. But then, to her surprise, Sophia sighed and leaned against the counter. "You're right," Sophia admitted. "I've been keeping something from you. But it's not what you think." Sophia revealed that she had grown up hearing stories about Aaron Johnson from her mother, who had been close friends with him before his falling out with Patrick. Aaron had always been painted as the black sheep of the family, a man who had been wronged and abandoned by those closest to him. "When I met Kendrick, I had no idea he was related to Aaron," Sophia said. "It wasn't until I saw a photo of your family that I made the connection. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to lose Kendrick, but I also wanted to understand the truth about what happened to Aaron. Naomi didn't believe her. So, you just happened to fall in love with my brother and worm your way into our family? That's too convenient. I love Kendrick, Sophia said firmly, and I never planned for any of this to happen. But your father, he's hiding something, Naomi. Something about Aaron. Don't you want to know the truth? Naomi was torn. On one hand, Sophia's story explained some of her strange behavior. On the other hand, it didn't change the fact that Sophia had lied to them all. Naomi decided to confront her parents, demanding answers about Aaron's disappearance. Patrick's reaction was immediate and fierce. "This is none of your business," he snapped. "Aaron made his choices, and we moved on. End of story." But Naomi couldn't let it go. For the first time, she began to wonder if Sophia was right, if Patrick had been hiding something all these years. As the weeks passed, Naomi's growing suspicion of Sophia turned from a quiet irritation to a full-blown obsession. She had always been a careful observer, the quiet one in the family, but lately, she found herself analyzing every gesture, every word Sophia spoke, and every move she made. What began as small, almost insignificant feelings of discomfort now began to fester into a gnawing unease that wouldn't let go. At first, Naomi tried to brush off her feelings. After all, Sophia was Kendrick's fiancée. She was supposed to fit into the family, to blend seamlessly into their established dynamics. And, by all outward appearances, she did just that. But Naomi couldn't ignore the subtle shift she noticed. The slight way Sophia looked at Kendrick when he spoke about their childhood memories, the way she seemed to know things about their parents' lives that no one had ever mentioned in conversation, and the unnerving frequency with which she brought up topics Naomi never thought anyone outside the family would be familiar with. Sophia was undeniably charming, effortlessly connecting with everyone in the room with her radiant smile and compassionate nature. But beneath her exterior, Naomi could see a pattern developing, a pattern that was impossible to ignore. Over the dinner table, while everyone was focused on their plates or the stories being told, Naomi would catch Sophia watching her mother closely, listening intently as Linda spoke about the family's early years in Atlanta, stories about the small apartment they had lived in before their business took off. It was the same with Patrick. She paid close attention to his recounting of his early days in the military, his brother Aaron's rebellious streak, and the battles they fought as a family before they were able to reach the level of success they now enjoyed. It wasn't just the stories she knew, it was the way she knew them. Naomi's mother had never spoken of her childhood struggles outside of the immediate family circle, but Sophia seemed to be aware of details only Naomi and her parents would have known. There was a particular conversation one evening after dinner that stuck with Naomi. Linda had told a funny story about Patrick's insistence on trying to fix everything himself, even when he had no idea how to do it. Sophia, laughing along with everyone else, had casually commented, "Your father always had that I can do it all mentality, just like my father. It's something I've always admired." Naomi's gut tightened. The words felt wrong, as though they had been rehearsed, as if Sophia had known to say them. She had never heard Sophia talk about her own father before. Naomi had always assumed that was a topic Sophia was uncomfortable with, but this comment, this seemingly random connection, seemed too pointed to be a coincidence. One evening, Naomi decided to stay in the house after dinner while Kendrick and Sophia went out for a quick errand. She hadn't seen her parents in a while and wanted to catch up. As she wandered through the hallway, she passed the study, a room Patrick and Linda typically kept locked but allowed Naomi to access whenever she needed. The door was ajar, and Naomi could see a flicker of light from inside. It was then that she noticed Sophia. Sophia was standing at the desk, her back turned to the door, examining something intently. Naomi paused for a moment, curious, wondering why she was still here so late. The family had long finished their meal, and Kendrick was supposed to have already taken her out. But what caught Naomi's attention was what Sophia was holding, an old, worn family photo. It was one of the few remaining photographs of Patrick's estranged younger brother, Aaron, who had left the family under mysterious circumstances many years ago. Naomi had heard bits and pieces about Aaron's life, how he had gotten into trouble with the law, how he had tried to reconcile with Patrick before disappearing again. But the details were always murky. The photograph had been a prized family possession, one that Naomi had grown up seeing framed in the study. It was one of those rare family moments when everything was still intact before the rifts and betrayal set in. Patrick rarely spoke of Aaron, and Naomi knew it was a sore subject for her father. But the picture, although slightly faded, remained on the wall. Naomi had always been careful not to touch it. But there Sophia stood, holding it, as if it were just another decoration. Naomi? Sophia's voice broke through Naomi's thoughts. I didn't realize you were still up. Naomi blinked, forcing a smile, though the unease in her stomach only deepened. What are you doing? She asked, trying to keep her voice even. Sophia quickly set the photo back in its place, an almost imperceptible tension in her shoulders. Oh, nothing. I was just admiring the family history, she said, her words smooth, rehearsed. It's a beautiful photo. Naomi nodded, though she didn't buy it. It's one of my favorites, she replied coolly. The conversation ended abruptly, and Sophia excused herself from the room. Naomi stood there for a moment, staring at the spot where the photo had been. Her mind raced, and the gnawing feeling of discomfort grew stronger. Something wasn't right. The following morning, Naomi entered the study to look at the photo of Aaron once more, something she had always done in quiet moments. But when she reached the shelf, she froze. The photo was gone. A sharp chill spread through her spine as she scanned the room. The picture of Aaron was nowhere to be found. The space where it had once been seemed conspicuously empty. Naomi's heart began to race. It couldn't have been misplaced. It was a piece of their family history, one of the last connections to a painful chapter that Patrick had never wanted to revisit. And yet, there it was gone. She rushed downstairs, her pulse quickening as she made her way to the kitchen, where her parents were already having breakfast. Mom, Dad, do you know where the photo of Aaron went? Naomi asked, her voice tight with urgency. Linda and Patrick exchanged a glance. What photo? Patrick asked, his tone curt. Naomi's breath caught in her throat. The family picture with Aaron in it. It was on the study shelf. Patrick's expression hardened instantly. That picture hasn't been touched in years, he said sharply. It's not something we talk about, Naomi. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Naomi felt the weight of her father's words pressing down on her. But she could sense that something deeper was going on, that her parents, particularly her father, were withholding something. The unease in Naomi's mind refused to let up. The disappearance of the photo was the final straw. She knew something was off about Sophia, and this only confirmed her suspicions. But the more she tried to uncover the truth, the more she realized that the answers she sought were buried deeper than she had imagined. Sophia, with her magnetic charm and seemingly perfect presence, had worked her way into the family in a way that made Naomi's suspicions feel almost paranoid. And yet the photo, now gone, was a clue she couldn't ignore. As Naomi began to piece things together, the family's facade of unity began to crack. The lines between truth and deception blurred, and Naomi was left to wonder. Was Sophia truly the innocent nurse and loving fiancée she appeared to be, or was there a darker secret hiding behind her polished exterior? Was she truly part of the family, or was she a dangerous force that had infiltrated their lives for reasons Naomi couldn't yet comprehend? Naomi's unease had now shifted into an overwhelming need to uncover the truth, no matter what the cost. And as she dug deeper, she would soon discover that the lies that held the Johnson family together were far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Naomi's curiosity about Sophia's past had evolved into an unrelenting obsession. Her suspicions, once buried under layers of family loyalty and politeness, now consumed her thoughts entirely. What started as a few fleeting questions about the oddities she had observed, the lingering glances, the unspoken familiarity between Sophia and their parents, had morphed into something darker. She could no longer stand the feeling that Sophia was hiding something from the family. Every time Naomi tried to dismiss her concerns, the gnawing sense of unease would grow stronger. There had to be more to Sophia's story, something hidden just beneath the surface. Late one evening, long after Kendrick had gone to bed and the house was quiet, Naomi decided to take matters into her own hands. She went to her room, pulled out her laptop, and began to search. She typed in Sophia Fields Atlanta and waited as the search results filled the screen. At first, there was nothing remarkable. A few social media profiles, some news articles about her nursing career, and the occasional mention of Kendrick's business ventures. But Naomi wasn't searching for something as mundane as that. She needed more. She expanded her search, digging deeper into local archives, and soon enough, something caught her eye. It was an old newspaper article, dated over 20 years ago, about a mysterious disappearance. The article mentioned a young man named Aaron Johnson, Patrick's estranged brother, who had gone missing without a trace. The search had gone cold, with no answers, no leads. The article was a mere blip in the local news, but it mentioned one detail that caught Naomi off guard. Sophia's mother, Evelyn Fields, had once lived in the same neighborhood where Aaron had disappeared. Her heart raced as she read through the article again. The connection was impossible to ignore. Naomi had heard the stories about Aaron's troubled life, the time he had spent in and out of trouble before vanishing without a word. But this was something different. Could Sophia have known Aaron? Had she somehow been involved in his disappearance? Naomi couldn't shake the thought. The following day, Naomi could barely focus on anything. Her thoughts were consumed with the information she had uncovered. It was as though the world around her had stopped, and all she could hear was the buzzing in her mind. She couldn't help but wonder, was Sophia's arrival into their family really as innocent as it seemed? Was Kendrick's fiancée somehow connected to the dark history of Aaron's disappearance? Naomi needed answers, and she was willing to confront Sophia herself to get them. That evening, after dinner, Naomi found herself alone with Sophia in the kitchen. Kendrick was in the living room, absorbed in a conversation with their father, and Linda had gone upstairs to rest. This was the perfect opportunity. Naomi's heart pounded as she turned to face Sophia, who was sitting at the kitchen counter, sipping her tea. Sophia, Naomi began, her voice surprisingly steady. I need to ask you something, and I expect you to be honest with me. Sophia looked up, her eyes wide and alert. Of course, Naomi. What's on your mind? Naomi took a deep breath, gathering the courage to confront the woman she had grown to distrust. I've been looking into your past. I found out something that doesn't add up. Sophia's face fell slightly, but she quickly masked it with a smile. I don't know what you're talking about. Naomi leaned in closer, her voice low but firm. You and your mother used to live in the same neighborhood as my uncle, Aaron, the man who disappeared over 20 years ago. How do you explain that? Sophia's eyes widened for a split second before she regained her composure. Her lips pressed into a tight line. Naomi watched closely, looking for any sign of guilt. But there was none. For a moment, Sophia remained silent, as if weighing her options. Finally, she spoke, her voice calm but strained. I wasn't sure when or how to tell you this, Naomi, Sophia said softly, setting her cup down on the counter. But now seems as good a time as any. You're right. My mother and Aaron did live in the same neighborhood when I was younger. And, well, Aaron was my father. Naomi froze. The words hung in the air between them, each syllable sinking deep into Naomi's chest. What are you talking about? She whispered, the shock in her voice unmistakable. Sophia looked at her with a mixture of sadness and apprehension. I know this is hard to believe, Naomi, But it's the truth. My mother had an affair with Aaron years ago, and I was the result of that. I didn't find out about it until recently, when I started looking into my family's history. Naomi's mind reeled. She couldn't process what Sophia had just confessed. She had always suspected there was more to Sophia's story. But this was too much. Could it be true? Could Aaron, the man whose disappearance had haunted their family for so long, really be Sophia's father? The implications of what Sophia was saying hit Naomi like a freight train. If this was true, then Sophia wasn't just Kendrick's fiancée. She was part of the family's most painful chapter. Sophia continued, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. When I found out, I didn't know how to tell Kendrick. I was afraid he would hate me for what happened, for what my family had done. But I love him, Naomi, and I wanted to come clean, especially now that we're planning to get married. Naomi felt her heart racing. The confession, if it could be called that, seemed both too calculated and too convenient. Why had Sophia waited so long to reveal this information? Why had she kept it hidden, only to share it when the engagement was already public? Naomi's thoughts swirled in confusion and anger, the weight of the truth pressing down on her chest. But Naomi wasn't convinced. Something about Sophia's story didn't sit right. Her emotions felt too rehearsed, her timing too perfect. Naomi couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story than Sophia was letting on. If Aaron was indeed her father, then why had he disappeared so abruptly? Why hadn't Sophia or her mother come forward with this information years ago? Naomi had always trusted her instincts, and in this moment, they were screaming at her. This was no simple family secret. There were more questions than answers, and she wasn't about to let Sophia off the hook so easily. Naomi didn't know how to feel. Her mind was clouded with confusion, betrayal, and suspicion. Was Sophia telling the truth? And if she was, what did that mean for Kendrick and their entire family? Could they really trust someone who had so many hidden layers? Over the next few days, Naomi tried to piece together what she knew. She revisited old family photos, scoured through childhood memories, and even spoke with relatives who had known Aaron. But nothing added up. Sophia's story didn't make sense. If she was truly Aaron's daughter, why had no one known about her until now? Why had the family been kept in the dark for so long? Naomi's doubts only deepened. It became clear to her that Sophia's version of events didn't align with what she had learned about her family's history. Was it possible that Sophia was hiding something darker? Was she playing a long game, manipulating Kendrick and the family in ways they couldn't even begin to understand? Naomi's thoughts were consumed by one thing: Sophia's secret. Her confession about being Aaron's daughter had rocked her to the core, but it wasn't enough to convince Naomi that Sophia was telling the truth. Naomi had always trusted her instincts, and they were telling her that something wasn't right. Sophia's story felt too rehearsed, too convenient, and Naomi couldn't just sit back and let it unfold without getting to the bottom of it. For the first time in years, Naomi found herself confiding in someone outside her immediate family, someone who knew her well enough to understand the weight of the situation. Darius, her ex-boyfriend, had been a constant presence in her life even after they'd broken up. They had remained close friends, and Naomi trusted him more than anyone. Darius was fiercely loyal and had always been the one person Naomi could rely on when things got complicated. The night after her confrontation with Sophia, Naomi found herself pacing in her living room, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She knew she couldn't let this go. If Sophia was truly hiding something, it wasn't just her future that was at stake. It was the whole family. Naomi needed to know the truth, and she was willing to go to extreme lengths to get it. She picked up her phone and called Darius, her hands trembling as she dialed the number. He answered almost immediately, his voice calm but concerned. "Naomi? What's going on? You sounded off earlier." Naomi hesitated for a moment, trying to gather her thoughts. "It's Sophia. I don't trust her, Darius. She says she's Aaron's daughter, but I think she's lying. Something isn't right." and I need your help." Darius was silent for a beat before responding. "You want me to help you dig into her past?" "Huh? I'm not sure about this, Naomi. This is getting pretty heavy." "I know," Naomi replied, her voice filled with urgency. "But I can't just sit back and let her manipulate everything. I need to expose her for what she really is." Darius sighed. "All right, I'm in. But we need to be careful. If we go too far with this, it could blow up in our faces." Naomi felt a surge of gratitude toward him. Darius might not have been completely convinced of her suspicions, but he had her back. They spent the next few hours brainstorming a plan. It wasn't just about finding more information. It was about confronting Sophia, making her reveal the truth, and, if necessary, forcing her to back down. They decided on a subtle approach at first, one that wouldn't raise any alarms. Naomi would continue to keep a watchful eye on Sophia, asking questions and observing her actions. But Darius would be the one to confront her directly, trying to get her to slip up in a way that would reveal her true intentions. Naomi knew the confrontation would be dangerous. Sophia had already shown signs of being a master manipulator, and Naomi couldn't predict how she would react when confronted with the pressure. Days passed, and the tension between Naomi and Sophia only grew. Naomi spent her time gathering more information, piecing together the clues she had uncovered. Meanwhile, Darius worked in the background, following Sophia's movements and keeping an eye on her interactions with Kendrick and the rest of the family. They needed to be sure before making their move. Finally, the day came when Darius decided it was time to confront Sophia. He had arranged to meet her at her apartment under the guise of wanting to talk about some family matters. Sophia, as usual, was eager to please and agreed to meet him, unaware of what was coming. Naomi sat anxiously at home, biting her nails as she waited for the call. Her mind raced with possibilities. What if they were wrong? What if Sophia really was innocent? But deep down, Naomi knew they had to go through with it. The lies had already gone too far. Darius called Naomi an hour later. His voice was frantic, shaky. "Naomi, something went wrong." "Sophia, she's not what we thought. She freaked out, Naomi. I didn't mean for it to happen. But she fell. I didn't." "Darius, what happened?" Naomi interrupted, her heart sinking. "She tried to run. She pushed me when I asked her about Aaron, and she fell backward. Hit her head on the table. She's unconscious, Naomi." Naomi's blood ran cold. She could barely hear him over the pounding of her heart in her ears. "What? Is she?" "I don't know, Naomi. I think she's alive, but I'm not sure." "Get her to the hospital," Naomi ordered, her voice shaking with a mixture of fear and anger. "I'm coming over." Naomi rushed to her car, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. How had things gotten so out of hand? Darius had always been impulsive, but this was something else. Naomi arrived at Sophia's apartment within minutes, her heart pounding in her chest. When she entered, she saw Sophia lying motionless on the floor, a pool of blood slowly spreading around her head. Darius stood nearby, his face pale and stricken with guilt. He looked up at Naomi, his expression a mix of fear and confusion. "She fell, Naomi. It was an accident. I didn't mean for this to happen." Naomi's eyes narrowed as she assessed the scene. Sophia was still breathing, but she was unconscious, her face twisted in pain. Naomi's mind raced. This was bad, very bad. But if Sophia woke up, if she could somehow remember the confrontation, there would be no going back. Naomi couldn't risk that. She stepped forward, taking a deep breath. "We can't let her wake up. If we do, everything we've worked for will fall apart. You need to help me, Darius." Darius hesitated for a moment, his eyes flicking from Sophia's unconscious body to Naomi's determined face. "What are you suggesting?" "We have to make it look like a robbery gone wrong. If anyone finds out what really happened, we're both done for. Do you understand?" Darius nodded slowly, his face ashen. Okay, I'll help. But Naomi, if this goes too far, if we get caught. We won't, Naomi interrupted, her voice cold. I'll take care of everything. Naomi quickly surveyed the apartment, assessing the layout. It was a small space, sparsely furnished, but there were signs of a struggle. Furniture knocked over, items scattered across the floor. She grabbed a few of Sophia's belongings, scattering them around to make it look like a robbery had gone wrong. Then, she grabbed the knife from the kitchen counter, placing it next to Sophia's body, careful to make it look like an attempted robbery gone awry. This will work, Naomi whispered to herself, as she turned to Darius. We need to act fast. In the chaos of the moment, Naomi and Darius thought they had everything under control. They were meticulous in covering their tracks, ensuring that the scene looked like a robbery gone wrong. Naomi had acted quickly and decisively, making sure every detail was in place to avoid suspicion. The rush of adrenaline was enough to drown out any lingering doubts. They had done it. They were on the verge of escaping with their secret intact. But what neither Naomi nor Darius could have predicted was that Kendrick had come home early from his business trip. Kendrick, still dressed in his business attire, stood in the doorway of Sophia's apartment, staring at the grisly scene before him. His eyes flicked from Naomi to Darius and finally settled on Sophia, lying unconscious on the floor. For a moment, he didn't move. His face was frozen in an expression of disbelief, his body stiff, as if he couldn't quite process what he was seeing. Naomi's heart skipped a beat. She had been caught. The last thing she expected was Kendrick walking in on them, and now the weight of the situation hit her like a freight train. The very person she had tried so hard to protect, the person whose family she had hoped to save from Sophia's manipulations, was now standing there, seeing the truth. Kendrick, Naomi stammered, her words faltering. She glanced at Darius, who was now looking around nervously, realizing the gravity of the moment. Kendrick's lips curled into a tight smile, but it wasn't one of relief or comfort. It was cold, calculated. His eyes locked onto Naomi, and for the first time, she saw something darker than the protective older brother she had always known. You don't have to explain anything, Naomi, Kendrick said, his voice eerily calm. He took a few steps into the apartment, his gaze sweeping over the scene once more. I knew this would happen. Naomi's mind raced. You knew? What do you mean you knew? Instead of answering immediately, Kendrick walked to the nearby window, his back to Naomi and Darius. He stared out at the darkening skyline, as though gathering his thoughts. Naomi's pulse quickened, and a knot formed in her stomach. The calmness in Kendrick's demeanor was unsettling. This wasn't the brother she'd grown up with. This was someone different, someone she couldn't quite understand. I've known for a while, Naomi, Kendrick finally said, his voice carrying a cold edge. Sophia isn't who she says she is. She never was. Naomi's heart dropped into her stomach. She felt the blood drain from her face as the truth began to settle in. What do you mean? You knew. All along. Kendrick turned around slowly, his expression darkening. Yeah, I knew. But I let it go on because I was too blinded by what I thought was love. And because I was afraid of what it would mean if I stopped her. Naomi took a step forward, her breath hitching. But why? Why didn't you tell anyone? Why didn't you tell me? Because, Kendrick said, his voice hardening, I didn't want to ruin everything. I didn't want to face the truth. Naomi felt as if the ground beneath her had suddenly shifted. She could hardly grasp what Kendrick was saying. He had known the entire time, yet he had allowed the charade to continue. Why? Was it for love? For power? For revenge? She wasn't here to love me, Naomi, Kendrick said, his words cutting through the silence like a sharp knife. His eyes flashed with something Naomi had never seen in him before. Anger, yes, but there was more. There was a deep resentment, an old bitterness that ran far deeper than she had ever imagined. Sophia wasn't in their lives because of love. She had a purpose, and Kendrick had known it all along. She wanted revenge, Kendrick continued, his voice low and menacing. Revenge for Aaron for what Dad did to him. I was just the easiest way in. Naomi's head spun. She felt like the room was closing in on her, the walls pressing in from all sides. What do you mean, what Dad did? She asked, her voice trembling. Kendrick's eyes darkened, and for a long moment, there was silence. The air in the room grew thick, heavy with the weight of the secrets Kendrick had been keeping. He took a deep breath, as though preparing himself to reveal something that would change everything. Dad and Uncle Aaron, they had a falling out years ago, Kendrick explained, his tone now devoid of any warmth. It wasn't just a simple argument. It was a business deal gone wrong, something that left Aaron bankrupt and humiliated. Dad didn't just ruin Aaron's business. He destroyed his life. That's why Aaron vanished. But before he disappeared, he made a promise. He swore he would get revenge. He'd make sure Dad's legacy was destroyed, and that's where Sophia comes in. Naomi's mind was racing now, piecing together the fragments of the past that Kendrick was revealing. It wasn't just about family drama. It was about betrayal, power, and greed. It was about things Naomi had never known, things her parents had shielded her from. Sophia was Aaron's daughter, Kendrick continued, and she wasn't here to fall in love with me. She was here to take down Dad's empire, piece by piece. I wasn't her husband. I was a pawn in her game. Naomi stared at her brother in disbelief, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't process what he was saying. Everything she thought she knew about Sophia, about Kendrick, about their family, it was all a lie. What had started as a simple desire to protect her family from a manipulative woman had turned into a revelation of betrayal, greed, and revenge that ran far deeper than anything Naomi had imagined. You let her get this far? Naomi asked, her voice filled with shock. You let her manipulate all of us? You knew all of this, and you still let her stay close to me, to Kendrick, to Mom and Dad? Kendrick's eyes flicked over to Darius, who had been standing quietly in the corner, processing the gravity of the situation. I knew what she was doing. I let her get close because I thought I could control the narrative. I thought I could keep her under control, use her to get what I wanted. But I was wrong. Naomi's thoughts were a whirlwind. Kendrick had known everything, and he had allowed the deception to continue. For what? Power? Revenge? Or was there something more? What kind of person had he become in his pursuit of control over his family's legacy? I'm sorry, Kendrick said, his voice softer now, but his words had the same chilling effect. I didn't want to destroy everything, but I had to be sure. I had to play the game to win. Naomi stared at him, feeling a deep sense of betrayal. The brother she had known, the one she had trusted, he was gone. In his place stood someone far more dangerous, someone who had been playing a long game, willing to sacrifice everything, including his family, to get what he wanted. And as Naomi stood in that room, surrounded by lies, manipulation, and the fallout of decades of family secrets, one thing became painfully clear. Nothing would ever be the same again. Naomi felt as though the world was collapsing around her. The ground beneath her feet seemed to give way, and her reality, once so solid and predictable, was now a fragmented puzzle she could no longer piece together. Her mind swirled with disbelief, rage, and confusion as she processed everything Kendrick had revealed. The lies, the manipulation, the betrayal. Nothing made sense anymore. Kendrick, her older brother, the one person she had always trusted to be her protector, had known everything all along. He had allowed Sophia to infiltrate their family, to worm her way into their lives and hearts. And all for what? A revenge plot so elaborate it had stretched over years, manipulated everyone around him, and destroyed all the relationships that once held their family together. Naomi's chest tightened as anger coursed through her veins. You let her do this to us. Naomi screamed, her voice raw with emotion. You let her tear our family apart. Kendrick, standing across the room, didn't flinch at her words. His cold, calculating gaze remained fixed on her, as though he were evaluating her, trying to understand the depths of her betrayal. It was a look she had never seen in him before, and it unsettled her. She had always thought Kendrick was the responsible one, the one who could hold everything together, no matter the circumstances. But now, he seemed more like a stranger, a man she could no longer recognize. "You're no better than him," Naomi spat, the words slipping out before she could stop herself. She pointed at her brother, the bitterness in her tone impossible to ignore. "You're no better than Dad. You've played us all just like he did, and you've ruined everything." Her chest heaved with frustration as she struggled to control the torrent of emotions threatening to overtake her. Kendrick had ruined everything: the trust she had in him, the security of their family, and the peace she had once taken for granted. "You don't understand, Naomi," Kendrick replied, his voice flat, devoid of any emotion. "I did what I had to do. This was bigger than us. You have no idea what it was like to watch everything unravel, to watch Dad's empire crumble. I didn't want to lose everything." Naomi felt a rush of fury. "So you let us all get dragged into your mess? You let Sophia manipulate us all? You destroyed our family. And for what? Revenge? Power?" Her voice cracked as the weight of the situation finally hit her. "You've been lying to me my whole life." "I didn't lie to you, Naomi. I couldn't tell you everything," Kendrick responded, his voice shaking slightly. He seemed torn between regret and justification, as though he was trying to rationalize the destruction he had caused. Naomi's thoughts flashed to their parents, their mother, who had trusted Sophia as part of their family, and their father, who had welcomed the woman into his home without question. They had been so naive, so oblivious to the dark game being played behind their backs. Naomi felt a deep ache in her chest as she thought of her mother, now shattered by the tragic events that had unfolded. The woman who had once nurtured Naomi's every dream had been betrayed by the very people she trusted the most. She could feel the years of accumulated pain and disappointment bubbling to the surface, threatening to break her apart. Kendrick had known all along, and he had allowed her, his own sister, to be manipulated by the same woman who had nearly destroyed their family. He had let Naomi walk into a trap set by a woman with a personal vendetta, and he had done nothing to stop it. "You've made your choices, Kendrick," Naomi said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And now you have to live with the consequences." Kendrick's eyes darkened as he took a step toward her. His presence in the room felt overwhelming, but there was a distance in his eyes that made Naomi's blood run cold. For a moment, she thought he might say something to justify his actions, to try and convince her that he had done everything for the right reasons. But instead, he just stood there, silent and resigned. The tension in the room was suffocating, and Naomi could feel the walls closing in around her. Her mind raced with thoughts of what had happened, what they had all done, the betrayal, the lies, the murder. Everything was spiraling out of control, and she was trapped in the middle of it. No matter how hard she tried to escape, the truth was inescapable. Naomi had crossed a line she couldn't come back from. She had broken something irrevocable, and now there was no turning back. "Naomi, Darius," Kendrick's voice cut through her thoughts. "I have to call the police." Naomi's heart stopped. She looked up at him, her body stiffening in fear. She had hoped, at some point, that Kendrick would protect her, that somehow he would shield her from the consequences of their actions. But now, she saw the cold, hard reality staring her in the face. Kendrick wasn't on her side. He wasn't going to protect her. He had his own agenda, and it no longer included her. "Please," Naomi whispered, her voice breaking. "Please, Kendrick, don't. I can't go to prison." But Kendrick didn't flinch. He walked over to the phone, his expression set in stone. The weight of his decision was apparent, but Naomi could feel his resolve. It was final. He was going to call the police. The realization hit Naomi like a punch to the gut. This was the end of everything. She had lost her family. She had lost her brother. She had lost herself. As Kendrick made the call, Naomi felt her world unravel. The consequences of her actions were rushing toward her, inevitable and unstoppable. She and Darius had gone too far, and now they would pay the price. Within hours, the police arrived at the apartment. They quickly assessed the scene and took statements from Naomi and Darius. The evidence was damning. There was no way they could deny what had happened. The struggle, the blood, the marks of violence. It was all there for the authorities to see. Naomi's fate was sealed. Darius, his face pale and full of regret, was arrested alongside Naomi. The two of them were taken into custody, their futures uncertain. Naomi couldn't stop shaking. The weight of what she had done, what they had all done, was unbearable. There was no escaping the truth now. But Kendrick, ever the strategist, used his influence to ensure that Naomi received a lighter sentence. He hired the best lawyers, pulled strings with his business connections, and made sure the court looked at her as a victim of circumstance. After all, she was his sister. They had once been a team, before everything had fallen apart. Despite his efforts, however, the damage to their relationship was irreparable. Naomi couldn't look at him the same way again. He had betrayed her, just as much as Sophia had. He had used his power to protect himself, while leaving her to fend for herself. The truth was, Kendrick wasn't the man she had once admired. He was just another person who had been willing to sacrifice everything for his own gain. As Naomi sat in her prison cell, reflecting on everything that had transpired, she realized that nothing would ever be the same. Her family was gone. The people she had once trusted the most were now strangers to her. And as for Kendrick, she would never be able to look at him the same way again. Her life, her future, and everything she had known was in ruins. All because of one woman's desire for revenge, and the family that had allowed it to destroy them all. Time seemed to crawl for Naomi. Each day behind bars blurred into the next, the weight of her actions and the loss of her family hanging over her like a dark cloud. Her once vibrant world, full of art, ambition, and hope, had been reduced to a small, sterile cell and the haunting memories of everything she had lost. She no longer recognized the person she had become. The anger and the desperate need for revenge had been replaced by a hollow, gnawing emptiness. In the quiet of her prison room, she would replay every moment of her downfall, searching for answers, for signs she had missed, for a way to change the outcome. Naomi spent hours writing letters. Letters to Kendrick, letters to their parents, even letters to Sophia, though she never mailed them. The words on paper seemed like the only way to keep her connection to the outside world, the only way to keep some semblance of control over the chaos that had consumed her life. But every letter to Kendrick returned unanswered, unopened, as if he had closed off every avenue of communication with her. It was as though he had erased her completely from his life. The man who had once been her confidant, her protector, had now become a distant ghost, a shadow in the background of her existence. In the solitude of her confinement, Naomi tried to make sense of what had happened. What drove Kendrick to allow the deception to unfold? Was he truly as complicit as she now believed? The more she thought about it, the more she came to realize that he had never been the brother she had thought him to be. He had manipulated her just as much as he had manipulated their parents, using their trust and love as tools in his game of power and revenge. Naomi had been nothing more than a pawn in his plans, a mere casualty of his ambition. Kendrick's silence spoke volumes. Each unanswered letter, each ignored phone call, was a cruel reminder that he had left her behind. No explanation, no apology, nothing. The bond that once connected them was now severed, leaving Naomi to reckon with the deep scars of betrayal. She had once believed that family could weather anything, that no matter what happened, They would always have each other. But Kendrick had proven that family could be just as fragile as any other relationship, that trust could be shattered by the weight of ambition, and that love could turn to ashes in the face of vengeance. Back in the outside world, Kendrick's life had unraveled in ways that Naomi never could have predicted. Once a rising star in the business world, he had quickly disappeared from public view. His company, which had once been a symbol of his success, began to crumble. The media had speculated for months about his sudden absence, with rumors of financial problems and personal struggles circulating behind closed doors. But none of the reports could have prepared the public for what came next. Kendrick Johnson, the once promising businessman, had vanished without a trace. Kendrick's disappearance was as mysterious as his sudden rise to power. No one knew where he had gone or why he had chosen to leave everything behind. His family, what remained of it, was left to speculate. Naomi had received no word from him, no indication of where he was, or whether he was even alive. The once thriving Johnson family had fallen into disarray, and the home they had built, the home that had symbolized their success, their unity, and their dreams, was now abandoned. The Johnson family home, a sprawling mansion in one of Atlanta's most prestigious neighborhoods, had once been a place of warmth, laughter, and celebration. It was where Naomi had grown up, where she had shared family dinners, birthdays, and holidays with Kendrick and their parents. It had been a sanctuary, a place where she had felt safe and loved, a place that represented everything good in their lives. Now, it sat empty and silent, its walls echoing the memories of a family that had been torn apart. The lawn, once carefully manicured, was overgrown with weeds. The windows, once sparkling with light, were now covered in dust and grime. The garage, which had once housed Kendrick's prized sports car, was now dark and unused. The front door, which had once opened to the warmth of family gatherings, now creaked ominously in the wind, as if the house itself was mourning the loss of its inhabitants. For Naomi, the empty house was a constant reminder of everything she had lost. It was where she had once felt loved and secure, and now it was a symbol of everything that had been destroyed by lies, betrayal, and greed. The house seemed to whisper to her in the dead of night, its silence filled with the ghosts of her past. She thought of the times her parents had walked through the front door, their faces full of pride and joy, their arms open to embrace their children. She thought of the family dinners, the holidays, the celebrations, times when everything had seemed perfect, when the future had seemed so bright. But now, those memories felt like fragments of a dream that had shattered beyond repair. As Naomi sat in her prison cell, she found herself thinking of the house often, longing for the days when it had been full of life, full of hope. She thought of her mother's warm smile, her father's steady presence, and Kendrick's laughter filling the air. Those were the moments she clung to now, the moments before everything had fallen apart. But those moments were gone, and the house, now just a hollow shell of its former self, would never be the same again. Naomi knew, deep down, that she could never go back to the way things were. Even if she were released from prison, even if she were to return to the world outside, the damage had already been done. Her family was broken beyond repair. The trust, the love, the unity they had once shared were all gone, replaced by lies, manipulation, and a thirst for revenge. The darkness that had consumed Kendrick, that had led him to make the choices he had made, now seemed to have spread to Naomi as well. She no longer recognized the woman she had been, the artist, the dreamer, the hopeful soul who had once believed in the power of love and family. The person she was now was someone hardened by betrayal, shaped by loss, and consumed by regret. There was no escaping the weight of what she had done, the people she had hurt, and the consequences that had followed. In her quiet moments, Naomi wondered if there was a way to fix things, Could she ever reconcile with Kendrick? Could she ever make amends for the choices she had made? The questions lingered in her mind, unanswered, as the days dragged on. But deep down, she knew the truth. The family she had once known was gone, and nothing could ever bring it back. In the end, the Johnson family story was one of tragedy, a tale of ambition, revenge, and the destruction of everything that once held them together. The house that had once been a symbol of their success now stood as a monument to their ruin. And as Naomi sat in her prison cell, the shadows of betrayal stretched long, casting their darkness over everything she had once known and loved. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest content. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below and let us know what you think. Thanks again for your support, and we'll see you in the next video.